What's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today, where do I even start? The Pittsburgh Penguins have fired a bunch of their staff up in the management press box as Brian Burke, the president of hockey operations, assistant general manager Chris Pryor, and general manager Ron Hextall have all been let go of their duties in Pittsburgh. The Washington Capitals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, when you think of a bygone era in the Metropolitan Division, were both at the cream of the crop, the top teams in that division. And specifically today, the Pittsburgh Penguins are on the decline. Now, you look at what happened for the Pittsburgh Penguins. A lot of things went wrong for this team. And I look at, what looked like a decent season, all the way up to really the beginning of this year. The slide really started about 30 games into the season. And I look in particular, they played the Islanders. They lost 5-1 to the Islanders. That was back after Christmas, the Christmas break in December. And really since that point, I really have had my questions about the Penguins. They went on a really long losing skid after that, and they never really got back to the level of play through the first 20 or so games of the season. They really fell off after that. Now, there's a lot to unpack with the Penguins, and we will get to all of that. But I think we need to start with, the fact that this has been the first 82-game schedule we've seen from Evgeny Malkin, or the healthiest season we've seen from Evgeny Malkin since 2009. That is a little bit alarming considering, Malkin's health has been an issue consistently year after year, but he's been healthy this year. So the excuse of, the superstars weren't healthy, that doesn't fly. Crosby's been playing out of his mind this year. Same thing for Malkin. But then everybody else, you start to wonder, the team that is built around Malkin and Crosby is no longer what it was a few years ago when they were winning back-to-back cups in the mid-2010s. So, what went wrong? Well, I think for starters, the doubling down on the goaltending has severely costed them an arm and a leg and a job. Brian Burke made it a clear point that this is a team that is going to ride and die with Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith. And we've seen how that's played out for them. It's been miserable. They need a completely new goalie tandem this summer. There is no easy solutions, though, because the only real guy that I look that's available and, happens to be from Pittsburgh is John Gibson. I think John Gibson will end up going to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they like their young guy, Lucas Dostal, and I think the Penguins need to find a way to get John Gibson. The problem is, what value do they have to get a guy like Gibson? Like, who are they trading out? Are they trading 2 first-round picks and Owen Pickering or Ty Smith? Not sure if I'm a huge fan of that idea, right? So when you really look at it, what will it take to get a new goaltender? The goalie market is very dry. There is not a lot in this year's market in free agency and even in the trade market. And another guy that I would even really consider looking at would be a guy like Thatcher Demko in Vancouver. I think he's going to end up staying. I think they've made that clear. They want to get back to the playoffs as soon as possible. Why would they trade Thatcher Demko? So that kind of answers that question. Then comes maybe another team like Buffalo, right? If Buffalo was trying to find a way to move someone out, I could see something like that potentially on the horizon, right? If they find a way to move out Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, if they maybe go down that route. Minnesota, hold on, before everybody freaks out. I said Minnesota and goaltending. Fleury has 1 year left on his deal. Would the Penguins consider bringing him back? Because it seems like Philip Gustafsson has kind of become the starter there in Minnesota, and I expect them to go with him going into the playoffs and next season. With 1 year left on his deal, does Fleury just say, hey, listen, I want to go back to Pittsburgh? Bill Guerin, Billy G, would he do him a solid and send him back to the Penguins? Again, these are the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves, and I think it is a real possibility, but again, there's going to be a lot of change in between the pipes. Bad contracts. That's the next big thing that really screwed over the Penguins. Some really bad really bad signings. They wanted to bring the band back together last summer. That was the big focal point. They bring back Letang, they bring back Malkin, they bring back Brian Rust, and the results have not been what they should be. For a team that's trying to keep their cup window open, hey, if you miss the playoffs, there's no Stanley Cup. So I think, mathematically, no team that's ever missed the playoffs has won a Stanley Cup. Yeah, that's right. So you got to be one of those top 16 teams in the playoffs, and the Penguins are not. So a really disappointing season, and again, a lot of those contracts are fairly lengthy. I think Letang and Malkin were both 5-year deals. Crosby's got 2 years left, I think. Rust has another 5 or 6 years. There's some term on these deals that is not going to be that easy to move. And then comes the next point, which is probably the one that is the most head-scratching and the most concerning from this group, and really was the nail in the coffin. Now, this is the other day, we heard that, from around the NHL, the perception of the Penguins really changed. So multiple GMs around the NHL laughed when seeing Hextall acquire Mikael Granlund from the Predators for a second rounder. So this is the quote from All Hockey Culture. So they said, former Penguins GM Ron Hextall didn't exactly impress the other general managers around the NHL when he made the move to acquire Mikael Granlund. According to Pittsburgh insider Josh Yeehee via The Athletic, multiple GMs scoffed at Hextall's acquisition of Granlund for a second rounder, wondering what exactly his plan was. Sources also indicate that this wasn't even Hextall's decision, but a recommendation made by former assistant general manager alongside Hextall, Chris Pryor, that Hextall followed blindly. Tough look for the Penguins' former management team. So again, that was a big thing, was they were kind of a laughingstock after that. The Penguins' perception, the fan base, really the lack of trust in Ron Hextall. I think right off rip, this was such a bad PR move for the Penguins. I look at the fact that he was down the road in the Keystone State in Philadelphia and couldn't find a way to make it work with the Philadelphia Flyers. Was not a good GM and kind of left it up to Chuck Fletcher to kind of finish the demolition in Philadelphia, right? And I think that we're seeing that right now with Hextall in Pittsburgh. A very similar storyline, taking back a former rival goaltender to be your general manager. It just right off rip did not sound good. And then you consider the fact that this team, under Hextall has never been able to get good goaltending, and it's kind of funny coming from a former goaltender. He's never been able to develop or find that diamond in a rough goalie. And that's really been a problem for him since his time in Philadelphia going into Pittsburgh. And that was kind of on full display. Now going to Brian Burke, I think he was very frustrated at the end of the season watching games in Pittsburgh, because he is a guy that always preaches truculence. He always, really makes it a point we need to be tough to play against, hard-nosed, made of concrete and brick. And this team was anything but that. They were soft, they were not very physical, and they got pushed around. And guys like Malkin and Crosby and Letang kind of had to fend for themselves at many different points this season. And I think that was a huge part of the issue for this team. And any of the bigger guys that were on this team, like a Jeff Petrie or a Brian Dumoulin or former Penguin, a guy like Brock McGinn, they just weren't a good fit for the team overall. And I think that was really a problem with this group. So the Penguins, just starting from that whole point and that perspective, a lot of things are very easy to criticize what happened in the Hextall era of the Penguins. And you look at the fact that they haven't won a round under Hextall, right? They have not won a playoff round since the new regime came in. This has been a team that's really been sputtering. They haven't beaten the Islanders. They haven't beaten the Rangers. They've struggled to beat the Capitals recently. This is a team that needs to make some significant changes. And, again, this is just a rumor, and I don't know how much real validity it will have at the end of the day, but the reports have been out there. Many within and outside of the Penguins organization believe that GM Ron Hextall will be relieved of his duties as soon as Friday morning, so that did end up coming to fruition. Along with this, the rumors of Kyle Dubas to Pittsburgh are heating up. The Penguins recently decided to complete a major expansion of their analytics department, something predominantly deemed Dubas' specialty. Dubas' contract with the Leafs expires after this year, and one can certainly see a world in which he's not brought back if Toronto fails to defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of the playoffs. While merely conjecture at this point in time, and a huge exclamation on that, it is certainly something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks, and that is pending Toronto's playoff success. So there's a couple of factors here in terms of what the future could be. So Kyle Dubas definitely makes a semblance of sense. I think Ray Shero will end up being the next GM of the Flyers. Take with that what you will. So I think Ray Shero potentially coming back is off the table, but that doesn't mean his son is off the table. I think Shero's son, they have a great connection with the state of Pennsylvania for hockey. Shero's son could be a candidate for at least some position in the Penguins organization. You also look at a guy like Jason Botterill, who is a GM for the Buffalo Sabres, previously an assistant in Pittsburgh. You wonder if there's some kind of maybe president of hockey operations role for him there as well. There's going to be a lot of interesting names in Pittsburgh. I'd love to see them go with someone completely different like a Kyle Dubas. He also really fits with, kind of not that old NHL player, but very analytical and very much fits the new ownership of the Penguins. This is the first time that Fenway Sports will be getting a new management team with this group, and you kind of wonder what's going to happen here with Fenway Sports. I think Dubas is a really good fit in that regard, and I think we're going to see something come to fruition from that. But this is a Penguins team that I honestly wonder how safe Mike Sullivan's job is. And this is a team that is much more corporate than they've been. They're no longer the family-run business by Mario Lemieux, who kept the team in Pittsburgh. This is Lemieux's, this is Mario's house, the new PPG Paints Arena. That narrative kind of going out the window. They've got new ownership there, very much corporate, and you wonder how much even safe Mike Sullivan is, yes, but also Crosby, Malkin, Letang. If they can find any value for those guys to potentially trade them, I don't think anything should be off the table, at the very least this summer. And just to see what's out there. I'm not saying you're trading Malkin and Crosby and Letang. Maybe you do if the value's there that you can't ignore, but are you not at the very least exploring it? I think it's a real disservice to the Penguins' long-term plans if they aren't at least exploring it. And I understand, I just made a video talking about how Jonathan Toews should end his career as a member of the Blackhawks and not sign somewhere for 1 year where he plays for 10 games, gets injured, and that kind of ruins that reputation. I think that is similar for these three players as well, but you do have to wonder for what's best for the franchise. The Penguins need a shock of youth in this group. And honestly, they don't have the talent to trade for a guy like John Gibson. I think they need to do a full teardown, and I wonder how safe are some of those core players on this Penguins team. I don't think it'll be this year, but I think next summer, again, it's kind of a bad message, so we signed Letang, Malkin, and Russ to these long-term extensions, and then a year later, we completely change the plans and trade them. I don't think that's good for morale, but I think that going into next year's trade deadline, into next summer of 2024, I think the Penguins are going to make some significant moves. And in the meantime, you look at even guys, I don't think a guy like Jake Gensel is even necessarily safe at this point. I look at some of those young defensemen like Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Unfortunately, they can't really move guys like Jeff Petrie. They can't move a Jeff Carter. God knows they aren't moving Mikael Granlund, especially with the narrative out there. So who out there is really going to be of any value to this team? I think the value is going to have to come from within. Some guys like Alex Nylander, Owen Pickering, more of Ty Smith. Those guys are going to have to continue to develop and kind of trim the fat, right? Jason Zucker not coming back. Nick Bonino not coming back. Completely new goalie tandem. That's where this team is going to see the most change this summer, and maybe not necessarily the big guys getting traded quite yet. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Do you think they should do a full rebuild? Do you think they should wait another year, try and see what they could do with a new coach? Potentially a new coach. I really like Mike Sullivan. I hope he doesn't move. They just extended him. But you just wonder with this new ownership, I got to think everything is on the table. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time. Peace.